Okay, Dennis.
Yes, Joe.
I'm going to hit you with a hypothetical.
Oh boy.
Let's say you are CEO of any of these legacy automakers. Close your eyes and pick one. Throw a dart.
Okay.
How do you see the best path towards transitioning to an all electric vehicle platform? Who do you think is currently doing it right? Who do you think is doing it wrong? What are your suggestions as someone who should have no opinion in this matter?
Wow. Yes. CEOs come to the class of Dennis. He's going to teach you how to run a company. Boy, you and
Well,
these
from a
you and
consumer
these questions.
perspective, from someone who's watching it all, sometimes the best ideas are from people who are just spectating.
True, but yeah. Uh, well, in regards to who's doing it well and who's doing it not well, to tackle that first, I feel like it's too early to really gauge it. Um, and maybe that means everyone's doing it wrong because everyone's taking a long time to get
Mm-hmm.
something out on the road. But I'm sure you can argue that they want their first implementations of electric cars to be good ones and not something that's rushed. So, if you're coming from that angle, then I guess you can't really get too down on legacy automakers for taking their time, but that's only if they're actually using this time wisely and, building up a competent product when it comes out. As such, with, I don't know, only a handful of legacy automakers actually having an electric car on the road right now, I don't think the sample size is big enough for me personally to say who's doing it right and who's doing it wrong. I guess I could give half a gold star or something to the ones that have actually released an electric car by this point, but uh,
Well, going off of plans,
mm-hmm,
like Volkswagen's plans to, what is it, 30 cars within 5 years.
yeah,
There's all these stated plans.
yeah.
Who's on the right path?
Well, uh, they basically all are on the right. Every European automaker is on the right path in terms of plans. Obviously, this is with the big caveat that any automaker and any company can say whatever they want in regards to we plan to do this, but until it's actually done or in the process of being done, it doesn't really matter too much. I mean, we saw Volkswagen in the ID3 was originally supposed to come out at the end of 2019, and yeah, global catastrophes and whatnot messed up everyone's plans, but as we've seen over the past year, they already had issues with just the production, with the software and stuff like that. So, the ID3 has come out, but it didn't come out as smoothly as they anticipated. So, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, as the great Mike Tyson says. And yeah, so European automakers, I mean, they all have lofty expectations. Typically, I think all of them by 2025 want to have at least 10 to 15 models in their lineup be electric or electrified, which I don't like that terminology because if you say electrified, you can get away with just having plug-in hybrids, and some even consider just regular hybrid as quote-unquote electrified. So we'll see about that. Um, Mercedes is building up a decent amount of cars for the next 2 or 3 years. BMW, even though they were pretty early to the party with the i3 and the i8, uh, really kind of slept the past decade and wants to have, I think, 10 cars by 2025. So, they're planning to have a
Mm-hmm.
decent amount of cars. But until, first of all, we see what kind of volumes these electric cars are in and how good they are, it doesn't carry too much weight. They do, however, are a step ahead of basically all the Japanese automakers who don't even have that lofty of plans at this point. I mean, you know me and Toyota got beef. Uh, so Honda, Toyota, Mazda, Subaru. Only very recently, within the past year, I want to say, that have they even given any sort of plans for electric cars, and they're nowhere near as grand as what Volkswagen, Mercedes, BMW, Audi want to do. Is that because they're more conservative and they don't want to set lofty expectations? You can make that argument, but they're definitely slower. They're going at a much slower pace. American automakers, Ford obviously has the Mach-E coming out this month, hopefully. Reviews have come out, so it's on the road. People have driven it. GM has, once again, pretty big goals. Fiat, now that I say it, Fiat Chrysler is probably the worst company in terms of where they are with electric cars and plans, because they're really nowhere to be seen, like, at all. I remember when we started EV Byte, one of our first articles was me writing about Fiat's plans for Maserati, Alfa Romeo, Fiat themselves, regarding what kind of electric cars they're planning. And that was in 2018, and I don't think anything has gotten closer since then in regards to progress towards electric cars.
Not even an update.
Yeah, I mean, their one electric car is what, the Fiat 500e, and the former CEO said to not even buy that car. So now that I think about it, now that I have run down all the brands, that is definitely the least exciting and the worst off brand as far as I can see.
Well, you mentioned plug-in hybrids earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and they're very different.
Yeah.
You know, the BEV and the PHEV crowds are really always up in arms against each other.
Mm-hmm.
But many argue that plug-in hybrids are the consumer-friendly, the easier transition. Do you think companies who are focusing on plug-in hybrids are doing the right thing, or should they go straight BEV?
Well, anytime I talk about plug-in hybrids, I always say with the caveat, it's better than nothing, because modern plug-in hybrids are starting to get into the all electric ranges that are like 20 to 30 miles. So for a lot of people with short daily commutes, they actually, and if they charge every morning, they might actually be able to successfully drive on basically all electric power if their daily mileage is low enough.
And if they do, from a economical standpoint, it's probably better.
Right. So obviously I consider a plug-in hybrid is better than nothing, definitely. But then you also have to consider, there's always a thought in the back of a lot of people in the EV crowds, minds, where they say, well, are the companies cheapening out? Or could they have gone further and delivered an actual electric car? Or is this just some sort of cost-cutting compromise they're going for? So obviously that's in a lot of people's minds. But like you said, it's definitely an easier transition coming from a gasoline car to a plug-in hybrid car. I want to say there's basically no argument there. We like to say there's no big lifestyle changes when you drive an electric car, but it is still, you still got to make some adjustments here and there to your life when you're going from a gasoline car to an electric car. So do I consider companies that are pushing for plug-in hybrids worse than ones that are going straight battery electric? I want to say no. I don't consider them worse off. Maybe if like a large majority of their upcoming electric cars, like over 50%, is plug-in hybrids, you kind of might give them a side eye a little bit, and especially if their battery electric models are in low volume, you might have to start questioning, the motives there, and are they really for the electric future? Or are they just trying to just get by with whatever the minimum is in the country in terms of what their emissions should be and whatnot? So it's hard. Obviously, I want electric cars everywhere. I want everyone to make electric cars, but I can't be so brazen as to say I look down upon people that drive plug-in hybrids, and I look down upon companies that create plug-in hybrids. I mean, if it's plug-in hybrid with only like 5 miles, like I think there was like the Escalade hybrid or something long ago where they got like an extra mile per gallon. I'm like, what was even the point of that? So if they have a plug-in hybrid with maybe like 5 miles of electric range, I'm gonna be like, I think you could do better than that. But if it's something like the Volt, the Volt had a electric range somewhere in the 20s to 30s, which is perfectly suitable for all electric driving for the daily average American. So I know it's kind of complicated when it comes to my feelings towards plug-in hybrids.
What about gasoline cars that are just really
Efficient.
really high efficient? Yeah, like that's really what the Japanese automakers are targeting. At one point, they actually become more efficient than electric cars. There's a few out there that are actually more efficient than a Tesla.
Well, is it? Well, you can't beat emissions. I mean, they still emit, and because I'm pretty sure it used to be the standards had to do with how efficient they were in terms of miles per gallon or liters per kilometer if you were in Europe, but now it's emissions ratings, and the Toyota Prius can get 100 miles per gallon, but there's still going to be emissions coming from the tailpipe, and they want there to eventually be zero emissions. So, I mean, they can continue making them, but with how legislation is going around the world, they're going to have to stop eventually. And I'm sure they can get hit if they won't listen to environmental reasoning, they'll listen to financial reasoning. And once countries start banning gasoline cars from being sold in countries, then they'll definitely have to listen. But we want the electrification to happen as quick as possible, obviously, but it's it's going to take a while. 2030.
It's too late for some of these companies.
No.
Someone like Toyota that hasn't really even begun.
No, I mean Toyota's weird because they finally announced a midsize SUV coming to Europe next year, and there's rumors that they're coming up with a model that's going to use solid state batteries also next year or in 2022, something like that. It's going to be revealed next year, but I don't think it's too far in the future. So I don't know what Toyota's play is. I don't know if they want their electric cars to be like premium, like the best. So they've been in secrecy working on solid state batteries. So when they release whatever electric car they want to release, it could be the best of the best. But no, I don't think it's too late for any automaker right now, because it's still gonna be a while. As optimistic as we can be, it's still gonna be a while before zero emissions cars are the majority of sales. It's still gonna be a decade at the very least. So, I mean, I'm not a automotive engineer, but I'm pretty sure you can come up with something within a decade, and even less so.
Well, we see companies like Tesla just continuously improving
Mm-hmm.
and getting further and further from what would be considered average to all the other legacy automakers' capabilities. Do you think at one point it's just going to be too late to jump in and create a comparable car? Or will someone eventually make the standardized equipment and the industry will stall out in terms of range, performance, and specs?
Well, I feel like most companies have goals set for 2025. And I don't know if part of it's probably because 2025 is a nice round number. It's in the middle of the decade and whatnot. But it seems like most companies as of now consider 2025 more or less kind of like the do or die time where stuff is going to really be moving into gear. So I think if by 2025 you don't even have a single electric car, then you're kind of in trouble. I don't know of any automaker, maybe barring Ferrari, I think, that isn't having plans for an electric car by 2025. But Ferrari's Ferrari. They can do whatever they want. They got the utmost brand prestige, so they'll do what they do. But I feel like within the next 5 years, every company needs to have at least something on the table. If from my point of view.
Well, putting you back in this hypothetical.
Yes.
As the CEO of Dennis Cars Corp.
Oh, cool. I have
a legacy automaker.
Great name.
Me and you, we've been discussing EVs for probably over a decade, nearing a decade. It's been a while.
It's been a long time.
It's been a while since we've had our eyes on Tesla and the Model S and the future.
Mm-hmm.
We've been following it really only strongly for the last few years, but I can only assume that every automaker has had their eyes just as long or possibly even longer on EV tech.
Mm-hmm.
You have stuff like the EV1 out nearly 20 years ago.
1999, yeah.
So EVs are nothing new.
Mm-hmm.
At what point in your role as CEO, at what point do you think you would have started considering and started transitioning? What point would you have moved on from the gasoline engine? Because it seems the majority of these automakers, all these plants, have really only come out, in the last 12 to 24 months?
Well, it's weird because I'm looking at like the history of some of the EVs and EV plants from companies, and a lot of companies had plans in the early 2010s for electric cars. I remember Volkswagen.
Oh, we saw them. Compliance cars.
Right. Yeah. But then by that point, Nissan already released a bona fide EV. Tesla released an actual EV. BMW released an actual EV, the i3. So I can't, if I was a CEO, unless I had clairvoyance, I don't know if I would have done any different, because how I'm imagining it is, 2010s was right on the tail end of 2008, economic recession, oil prices super high, whatnot. So people were like, all right, well, these oil prices kind of high. Maybe we should start looking at electric cars. But then I don't have the numbers over me, but I'm pretty sure as the 2010s went on, oil prices started to go down again, and people didn't care for super compact cars once, anymore. And, all these companies says like, we don't really want to put the R&D into straight up electric platforms and batteries and all that nonsense. So everyone kind of took a break, even though they were starting to put the foundation in the early 2010s. As we've seen with BMW, they went through, they made the i3 and the i8 and then literally did nothing. I mean, there was a couple of plug-in hybrids here and there, but they literally made an electric car and then they're just like, we'll just wait. And now look, they look like they're almost at the end of the line, even though they were one of the first in the party. So if I was a CEO, I don't know if I would have done much different unless I was super duper, for the environment. Which I don't know how many CEOs are, to be honest with you. So I feel like maybe by 2015, 2016 would have been a reasonable time where I feel like most CEOs could have really started, because the Model S and X were in full swing. The Model 3 was announced, I'm pretty sure. Not yet out, but they saw like, wow, Tesla survived. Barely was surviving. I'll give it that. Barely was surviving, but survived for all those years and was planning a mass market car. I feel like that would have been the opportune time to start looking into electric car development.
Remember, the Model S and X were very expensive.
Yeah.
With battery cost being the significant factor there. It wasn't really feasible to make an electric car. Tesla's kind of paved this path that made it possible for everyone to jump on board.
Yeah, but every brand has a luxury brand. Volkswagen could have had an Audi. BMW is just BMW. Toyota could have had a Lexus electric car. So they were expensive back in the day, but
look at the Fiat 500e.
Ugh.
Minimal range, sub 100 miles of range, and they were still losing money on the cars.
And
battery costs were just ridiculous.
It was still like, what, 40, 50 grand or something like that?
Yeah. How long did it take Tesla to finally make money? You can't really blame these legacy automakers for taking so long.
Yeah, but you can't say that. You can't say those words. You're going to get us canceled. So, yeah. I mean, hindsight's 2020. Obviously, I'm sure most CEOs would be like, "Damn, I wish we started a couple years early or something." But that's just how it goes.
Okay.
When would you have started?
When would I have started? It's tough. It's tough. I mean, clearly, like I said earlier, we have both discussed EVs were clearly in our minds the future. But at what point, as a leader of a company, do you decide that it's time to start putting the largest portion of your R&D into that tech?
And convince
You
your
look at
shareholders that
yeah,
you're doing the right thing.
Mercedes just stopped. They stopped R&D on combustion engines and
Yeah.
have gone full battery electric in terms of R&D.
Yeah.
So making a jump like that 10 years ago, you would have never seen from any legacy automaker.
No.
But I do think they started a little late. It seems like, when everyone came out with their compliance cars, no automaker wanted any R&D. They were just like, okay, let's just buy this off-the-shelf battery, slap it on here, and take the loss. We only have to sell like a few of these. At that point, it should have been like, hey, maybe we should start trying to improve this so we make a little bit of money here. Because clearly this is the path. Clearly this is the future. You have Tesla, a company that like no one thought would survive, is somehow thriving. And like, yeah, it's only a few thousand cars a year, but hey, even back then they were doing more sales with the Model S than Porsche was with the Panamera.
Mm-hmm.
So right around that point, compliance car era, maybe 2015-ish. That should have been the awakening point.
They should have.
And for some it was, but for majority it wasn't.
Yeah.